Homeless girl asks paralyzed millionaire for food. His shocking response will haunt you forever. In the heart of downtown, where shimmering skyscrapers clawed at the sky, a shocking scene unfolded on a cold winter morning that would leave the city's pulse racing. A young girl, her clothes ragged and skin smudged with dirt, approached a car longer than most apartments. Inside, slumped in a seat, was a millionaire. A shadow of his former self. Paralysis had stolen more than his ability to walk. His eyes, filled with a haunting mixture of despair and surprise, locked onto her. The girl's hands trembled, not from the chill in the air, but from something else, something deeper. She was almost a ghost in this urban landscape, a living contradiction against the glitz outside her reach. "Please, sir," she whispered, voice barely a tremor in the wind. "I'm hungry." The words hung in the air, mixing with the exhaust of the luxurious vehicle, creating an invisible barrier between their two worlds. He felt that his throat tightened, his heart raced. He was a man of power, his name once synonymous with wealth and influence, yet here he was, trapped in his own body, forced to confront the raw reality of life on the streets. Around them, a small crowd gathered, faces filled with disbelief. Murmurs rippled through the onlookers. Someone pulled out a phone, others leaned in closer, intrigued by the unfolding drama. The tension in the air was electric, every eye was locked on the duo. This was not just a moment, it was a clash of fates, a stark representation of the divide that sealed their lives in separate orbits. What could possibly transpire between a child of the streets and a broken titan of industry? And then, in a split second, the atmosphere thickened, shadows danced around them, as he made his move. His fingers twitched, barely able to comprehend what he was about to do. Was it compassion, or something darker brewing in his chest? The questions began to gnaw at the crowd. What kind of answer could possibly emerge from this confrontation? The million-dollar question loomed: would he give her what she asked for, or would his heart remain as paralyzed as his body? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the seconds ticked by, a chilling silence enveloped the scene. His eyes flickered with a mix of resolve and uncertainty. Finally, he turned to her, and the words that flowed from his lips were as unexpected as they were haunting. Was he about to change her life forever, or seal both their fates in a twisted turn of fate? One thing was clear: whatever happened next would echo in their lives long after this moment faded into the cold air of the city. He took a deep breath, the air thick with anticipation. "I can't help you," he said, his voice strained. The crowd gasped, and a murmur of disbelief swept through them like wildfire. The girl's eyes widened, shock rippling through her fragile frame. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. How could this man, who once had the world at his feet, turn away now? She stumbled back, her desperation flickering like a candle in a tumultuous wind. "Please," she gasped, her voice edged with desperation. "I just need something to eat." Just a bit. The tears that welled in her eyes were a testament to the hunger that gnawed at her, the bleakness of survival engraved on her very being. He felt the weight of her gaze, piercing through the jagged barriers he'd built around himself since the accident. Something deep inside him stirred, battling against the ice-cold apathy that had settled over his heart like a heavy fog. Despite his inability to move, emotions cascaded through him: anger, guilt, shame, a chaos that threatened to swallow him whole. "Why?" he asked, his tone softer now, the question lingering in the silence that followed. "Why should I?" The girl leaned closer, her filthy hands gripping the edge of the car. Because nobody else will." Her voice trembled but held a raw strength, a strength he'd long lost. The crowd fell silent, captivated by the poignant exchange, a pitiful contrast against the backdrop of steel and glass that he blinked hard, grappling with his emotions. Around them, people shifted uncomfortably, whispering, judging, but he was focused on her. Somewhere beneath the surface of his paralysis, a tiny ember fought to flicker to life. Would he extinguish it, or fan the flame? In that moment, a figure emerged from the periphery of the crowd, his assistant, a polished young man in a designer suit. "Sir, we should leave," the assistant urged, sensing the tension. "Shut up," he snapped, surprising even himself. The assistant recoiled, and a ripple of awe spread through the onlookers. Then, without thinking, he raised his arms, gesturing towards the storefront of a nearby cafe. "Get her something," he ordered, voice firm, almost commanding. Whispers bubbled among the crowd, stunned expressions shifting from disbelief to intrigue. "Wait, what?" The girl blinked, her hope mingling with confusion. His assistant hesitated, glancing back at him, a mixture of disbelief and hesitation in his eyes. "Sir, we don't have time for this. Now!" he barked, forcing a sense of authority into his words that he hadn't felt in years. The young man, wide-eyed, scrambled away, quickly navigating the sea of onlookers. The moment lingered, the weight of their connection thrumming in the air. For the first time, he felt a flicker of power, the power to do something, however small, for someone else. But just as hope began to rise, the atmosphere shifted. A voice broke through the murmurs, a chilling shout from the edge of the crowd. "What are you doing?" "She's just a beggar." The words dripped with contempt, igniting voices of agreement among a few, echoing the dark corners of society. Tension crackled as he turned towards the source. In that instant, a realization hit him like a punch: this single act of kindness could unravel more than just their lives. As he searched the crowd's faces, some twisted with scorn and others filled with intrigue, he understood. This was only the beginning. A battle loomed on the horizon, one that would test not just his newfound resolve, but the very structure of his reality. And as his thoughts raced ahead, he couldn't shake the feeling that their destinies had just been woven together in a way he couldn't yet comprehend. Would this simple act of kindness lead him down a path of redemption, or trap him deeper in insecurity? Before he could answer that question, the crowd erupted into chaos. What now? He thought, bracing for whatever was about to happen next. Something darker was stirring within the crowd, something that threatened to change everything. The uproar grew louder, a cacophony of anger and confusion. People jostled one another, their faces scrunching into masks of disapproval, disbelief, and shock. It felt like the air, thick with tension, might choke him. In that moment, he realized this wasn't just about him or the girl. "Why are you helping her?" someone shouted. The accusatory tone sliced through the chaos, rallying others to voice their disdain. "You think giving to a beggar will change anything?" The girl flinched, retreating a step, and suddenly he felt the ground shift under his feet. She stood small and frail, yet anchored to this moment by sheer will. Her existence challenged their beliefs, their comforts. He couldn't let her be the one to bow under the weight of the judgment around them. "Shut up!" he hollered, his voice rising above the fray, surprising even himself. The abruptness of his outburst sent ripples through the crowd. Confusion washed over their faces, followed by resentment. He stepped forward, trembling but determined. "What's wrong with you people?" He didn't recognize the man in the glassy facade he had become. "You think she chose this life? Look at her, hunger is consuming her." For a heartbeat, the crowd shrank back, a pause in their hostility, as if the truth of his words momentarily disarmed them. He locked eyes with the girl, her gaze brightening, a glimmer of hope igniting amidst the shadows. "Please, just a moment longer," he thought, pouring every ounce of his shame and guilt into the plea. The assistant returned, burdened with a plastic bag bulging from the cafe. "What did you get?" he questioned, his anxious energy palpable. The assistant hesitated, battling his own doubts. "2 sandwiches, a little apple juice." His voice trailed off, watching the mess unfold before them, or where nothing was ever just that simple anymore. Good enough, he said, grabbing the bag away. Heart racing, he approached the girl again. Here, he offered, his hand trembling as he extended the food to her. Take it. The crowd murmured, their collective breath hitching. They watched the transformation, the girl's fear morphing into a spark of astonishment mingled with deep-rooted skepticism. She took the bag, her fingers brushing against his as she held on tightly, and for a moment, he felt everything shift, but then came the backlash. Look at him. Such a waste. A voice shouted. Throwing money at her problems like it's going to solve anything. The venom dripped from those words, intensifying the tension that filled the air. Why does it matter to you? He countered, his voice trembling with intensity. What harm is a little kindness? Maybe it's not a solution, but it's something. The girl opened the bag, peering inside, her eyes lighting up as she pulled out a sandwich. A wave of relief washed over him. He had done something, however small, but it was fleeting. From the rear of the crowd, a figure emerged, pushing through with a determined stride. What's this? The newcomer sneered, a tall man in a dark coat that billowed like a storm cloud. He surveyed the scene with disdain, eyes narrowed, as if sizing up a prize. The air crackled with tension, like static before a storm. Who is he? He murmured, the chill prickling up his spine. The whisper spread like fire through the crowd, curiosity replacing some hostility but not all. With a slow, deliberate step, the man fixed his gaze on the girl, then to him. You think you're a hero now? His voice dripped derision. You don't even know what you've walked into. Fear crawled through him like ice. He glanced around, the crowd pressing closer, drawn in by this new figure's dangerous aura. Was this man a harbinger of trouble, or did he hold secrets that could unravel everything they had just started to build? As the tension peaked, the shadows deepened around them. The girl's fingers tightened around her sandwich, a quiver of uncertainty passing through her. But before he could process how to respond, the dark figure smiled a chilling smile that sent a warning shot through him. Believe me, he said, voice low and cutting, you have no idea what you're dealing with. And in that instant, he knew whatever came next would change everything. The atmosphere twisted tighter as the dark figure stepped closer, flashing that insidious smile. The crowd held its breath, caught in the web of dread he had spun. With every passing moment, he felt the weight of their gaze, so many eyes watching, waiting for him to falter. What do you mean by that? He shot back, his voice thick with defiance, but inside, doubt spiraled. What had he really just stumbled into? The girl's eyes flickered between them, a storm of emotions raging just beneath the surface. The man leaned forward, the cold glint of predation in his eyes. This isn't just a charity case you're dealing with. You're meddling where you don't belong. The words twisted his stomach, sinking deeper than he wanted to admit. Yet he couldn't back down now. I won't just stand by and watch. He shouted, anger igniting in him. Brave words for a fool, the man retorted, his tone mocking. People like you think they can save the world with a couple of scraps. But the world doesn't work that way. The crowd seemed to swell and contract around him, heat radiating from their collective disdain. Tongues wagged, voices muttered. Who was this man? Why was he here? It all felt sinister and purposeful. He took a cautious step forward, wanting to protect the girl, to reassure her. She's not just a problem, she's a person. Can't you see that? His heart raced, pumping anger through his veins for both the girl and against everyone's apathy. Ah, but that's where you're wrong, the man replied, his voice dripping with contempt. You think seeing her humanity untangles the mess of this city? You don't understand what's at play here. The girl flinched slightly at the venomous tone. He wanted to reach out to her, to tell her to ignore the chaos surrounding them, but he couldn't take his eyes off the man. Then enlighten me. He spat defiantly, feeling rage seep through him. If you think you know so much, what's your solution? Ignoring her existence. That makes you part of the problem. A low laugh escaped the man, chilling and devoid of warmth. You're right. Ignorance is swimming in a shallow pool. But the truth? It will drown you. The girl's face twisted with confusion. What truth? Just as he wanted to pry deeper, a shout erupted from the back of the crowd, a voice punctuated by panic. Look out! Someone yelled. In an instant, chaos erupted. People turned and surged like a wave, flocking in every direction. He watched in horror as the dark figure lunged forward, his coat flaring like shadows flying through the night. No! He reached out instinctively, grabbing for the girl, who was now teetering on the edge of the torrent. As bodies crashed against one another, he felt the pressure of the crowd threatening to swallow them whole. He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her back against him, heart pounding, fear clawing at his throat. Stay close! He shouted, adrenaline surging. But there was no time to think, they were in the middle of a storm, and he had to protect her from whatever happened next. Just as he felt the man's ominous presence right behind them, a loud explosion rang out, echoing through the street. Everything seemed to freeze for a split second, lives suspended in disbelief. Within that silence, he could only wonder what shadows were closing in. Was this the end of their struggle, or had they stirred something much darker? And before he could catch his breath, he remembered the man's last words. What truth lay hidden beneath it all? Suddenly a figure emerged from the smoke, and poor decisions painted the scene in stark colors. The tension crackled again, heavier now than ever. What were they about to uncover? Amid the chaos, the thick smoke curled and twisted, a living entity escaping from a world of nightmares. Hearts raced, breaths were shallow, yet clinging to hope felt increasingly frail. His grip around the girl tightened as panic festered in every direction. The air was saturated with fear, crackling like electricity waiting to spark. As the figure emerged, they slowly came into view, a silhouette at first, then sharpening into reality. It was clean-cut, a stark contrast to the grit surrounding them, a tailored suit that seemed to mock the desolation of the streets. Thank you for gathering, everyone, the man called, his voice smooth like silk, but sharp enough to cut through the pandemonium. It's time you learn just how precarious your existence truly is. His eyes locked onto the girl he had just shielded. You see her, but do you really see her? What do you want? He shouted over the noise, adrenaline mingling with desperation. Instinctively, he positioned himself between the girl and the predator of a man, who stepped closer still, unperturbed by the chaos. Control, the man replied, words dripping with disdain. Power comes from fear. Control is what allows people like me to thrive while wretches like her flounder. The crowd started to murmur again, their earlier safety net of unity unraveling. Heads turned, faces contorted in confusion and anger. He could feel the energy shifting, could see that unsettling glimmer of realization in their eyes. They were starting to understand their place in this dark play. No. We don't have to stand for this. He shouted, a spark of rebellion igniting in his chest. The girl cowered behind him, but her eyes flickered with a budding courage. Amidst the churning storm of bodies and shouts, she reached out, touching his arm gently. Maybe he's right, she whispered, her voice trembling. We can't change anything. The words hit him like a dagger, each syllable ringing of hopelessness he couldn't accept. No. You're worth more than this. We're all worth more. He desperately insisted, emotions building as he turned to face the crowd, searching for allies. Don't let him dictate who you are. Yet, with every shout of defiance, the man only smiled wider, a predator reveling in the turmoil. You think fighting back makes you stronger? He taunted. How quaint. But those who resist always pay the ultimate price. I'm here to offer you a choice. A series of metallic clicks erupted behind him, wrenching his focus. With horror, he turned slightly. An array of dark figures shadowed by the smoke, armed and cold, surrounding them silently like vultures. This was worse than before. This wasn't just a tempest, it was a war. Choose wisely, the man continued, undeterred. Become complicit, and live. Resist, and watch the consequences unfold. The eyes of the crowd darted from him to the girl, from freedom to chains. A chilling silence replaced the uproar, as if the air itself had thickened into spent fear. What were they going to do? A choice needed to be made, and yet, a new revelation loomed over them like the heavy weight of an impending storm. In the heart of chaos, could the flicker of defiance prevail against such overwhelming darkness? As the armed figures advanced, he gripped the girl's hand tighter. It felt small, fragile. Was it possible for them, two mere souls against a tide of bloodthirsty greed, to spark something more than mere survival? In that moment of uncertainty, a question blasted through his mind: what price would he pay to keep the girl, and everyone else, from drowning in this sinister game? The gravity of their situation pressed down as he took a deep breath and steadied himself for the fight of their lives. Just then, a figure from the crowd shouted out, voice cracking with courage. "Let us show them we're not afraid." His heart raced at the thought: could they band together, ignite courage from the ashes of despair? Or was it too late? What would they uncover in their struggle against the encroaching shadows? And would it lead them to salvation, or ruin? The man's voice rang out, clarity piercing through the haze of dread. "You want to resist?" he boomed, amusement dancing along the edges of his words. "By all means, go ahead. It'll make the consequences all the more delectable." His fingers tightened around the girl's hand, feeling the trembling pulse of fear coursing through her small frame. The energy around them shifted again, transforming into a palpable tension that hung thick in the air. The crowd was a grouping of souls on the edge, a precarious balance of courage and fear, hope and despair. "Do it!" the figure shouted again, and at that moment, a low, collective growl rippled through the crowd, a mix of disbelief, outrage, and something deeper. He felt it, too, a mighty roar brewing in the belly of the terrified assembly. Perhaps they weren't as broken as they seemed, the girl beside him inhaled sharply, her eyes wide with a blend of dread and a flicker of determination. "What if we fight?" she whispered, each word steadying her resolve. "What if we show them we're worth more than they think?" He could see her spirit igniting, the seeds of rebellion finding ground in her heart. Yet the shadows lined up behind the man, stark figures waiting for the signal to strike. The man's expression twisted, lips stretching into a smirk that danced with malice. "Fear can be a powerful motivator," he said, fingers tapping his chin. "Imagine what kind of numbers I could draw out of this rabble. Surrender or face annihilation. It's your choice." Around him, the crowd swayed. There was a desperation within their eyes, some wanting to believe, others clinging to safety. "Together," he called out, raising their joined hands as if they were lightning rods drawn to one another. "We're stronger together. We can find a way." A heartbeat of silence stretched, every breath suspended. Then, a burst of voices surged from the mass, rumblings of defiance intertwined with fretful whispers, but anger poured forth. "We will not bow to fear," someone shouted. Others echoed the sentiment, the sound crescendoing into a wave of protest that rippled through the terrified souls surrounding them. In that moment of fierce unity, he turned, glancing toward the armed figures closing in. A shadow from their ranks moved forward, a glint of metal catching his eye, the sinister outline of a weapon. His heart plummeted. "Now we're cooking," the man's voice belted out, satisfaction lacing his tone. What a delightful display of defiance. The armed figures, flanking him like wolves, positioned themselves for an attack, yet the crowd surged, fueled by energy it had long forgotten. Words of resolution bounced around, as if resurrecting something lost. "Stay firm. Don't waver," he shouted, finding strength in the collective spirit of people uniting against a common foe. The girl beside him squeezed his hand tighter, eyes bright with determination. "On 3. 1. A voice broke through the throng. 2. Another added, and he could feel it, this impending charge. A visceral energy surged through him. 3. The crowd erupted forward, a wave of humanity surging against paralyzing dread, but in that pivotal moment, just as confrontation teetered on the edge, the man smirked, helmeted figures returning their weapons to bear. "We'll see who truly prevails," he taunted, a single gunshot echoing across the chaos like thunder crashing in a storm. He turned instinctively, eyes wide, dread coursing through him only to watch as the crowd recoiled, but not from the bullets. They quivered, realizing they were not only fighting for their lives but wild ambitions concealed behind false claims of control. The surprise of the shot reverberated, shocking and electrifying. What fate awaited them now? Would they retreat in fear, or would this galvanize their spirits into something monstrous? As the gun smoke mingled with the acrid scent of chaos, he felt reality slip, the starkness of potential devastation looming. What would be the cost of their defiance? Would they ignite a flame of hope, or would darkness indeed be their only inheritance? And amid all this, only one question hung heavy: how far was he willing to go to protect the girl still gripping his arm, and the newfound sense of purpose swelling in a terrified crowd ready to face the depths of despair? The crowd faltered, breaths hitching in unison as the gunshot still lingered, thick and ominous. Eyes darted around, uncertainty crashing into the swell of adrenaline that had just moments ago emboldened them. "Stay together!" he roared, rallying what remained of their resolve. But even as he spoke, a shudder rippled through the mass, their unity trembling like a fragile leaf in uncertain winds. The girl's grip on his hand tightened, knuckles whitening, her gaze glued to the grim figures before them. "Look!" she cried out, voice cracking under pressure. "The shadows, they're moving." Indeed, the armed sentinels shifted, a formation resembling a wall of stone, menacing and unyielding with their weapons poised. He could see their cold eyes glinting, hungry for chaos as they awaited the crowd's next move. "Are you really willing to die for this?" the man sneered, an unsettling calmness resting within his hollow laughter. "You think they'll spare you? This frenzy continues, and you'll only know agony." Soundtracking his taunted assurance, the girl's resolve flickered. She hesitated, her wide eyes vulnerable. But before despair could settle, another voice erupted through the crowd, an elderly man, silver hair stark against the chaos. "They may kill us, but they will not break our spirits. We will write our own story." At his words, something stirred within the assembled masses. A few shouts erupted, their fervor igniting the hearts once again. He felt it united, they could be more than mere shadows against the silencing despair. "Together!" he shouted, uncertainty giving way to passion. "We fight not just for freedom, but for everyone who lost their voice." Yet just as the atmosphere shifted, a chilling sound sliced through the renewed courage, a second gunshot, resounding sharply, causing the earth beneath them to tremble like an earthquake's last breath. It carved through the air, and at that moment, value was weighed in fears and consequences. A woman screamed, and the crowd staggered back, panic surging, crowding him and the girl closer together. "What do we do?" she gasped, fear flashing across her face, her voice barely a whisper. "Hold on tight," he urged, adrenaline coursing through him, ignoring the made-up notion of surrender. "We don't retreat." Before he could rally them again, chaos erupted. The armed figures seemed to enter into a synchrony of violence, gunfire started crackling like relentless thunderclaps. He ducked instinctively, half dragging the girl with him as bodies collided in a frantic bid to escape. Whoever was in control now reveled in the mayhem, pushing the crowd further into disarray. "Go, go!" he roared, shoving the girl alongside him as they fought through the throng. Many stumbled, falling, not out of fear but out of the weight of raw humanity colliding with cruelty. Together, they surged toward the edge of the fray, hearts pounding, breaths uneven. Each step felt like cutting through treacle, a fight not just against the armed Goliaths but the despair trying to seize them all. "Over there!" she shouted, pointing toward a narrow alley opening where shadows offered a flicker of hope. They dashed, but just as he thought they might evade the shoals of danger, a figure emerged from the shadows, a hooded woman, face obscured, eyes blazing with a mix of wisdom and defiance. "Follow me quickly. There's no time." She beckoned with urgency, her voice both a plea and a command. As the trio plunged into darkness, he felt the walls of his world closing in a space encasing fear but also promise. What tangled web lay ahead? Where would this lead them? There was no turning back, each heartbeat pounded his resolve stronger. What awaited in this treacherous embrace of shadows? Would they find a sanctuary or a trap? The truth loomed ahead, inviting uncertainty with open arms. The shadows felt alive as they slipped into the alley, the narrow space swallowing them whole. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of dampness and despair. He glanced back over his shoulder, heart racing, ready to scream for everyone to follow, but the entrance to safety held only a desperate silence. "Where are we going?" he gasped, struggling to keep his breath steady as they followed the hooded woman deeper into darkness. She didn't answer right away, leading them through twisted paths that seemed to twist and turn in on themselves. Brick walls loomed tall, reaching up to an invisible roof. The girl beside him sputtered, her voice tremulous, "What are you doing? We can't just hide. Trust me." The hooded figure snapped, and an unexpected fierceness sparked in her tone. "If you want to survive, you need to keep quiet." He could see the girl's face shift, uncertainty battling with fear. "But we can't let them win. We have to fight." "Sometimes," the woman said, turning to face them, "the best fight is the one you don't have to engage in." Her eyes glimmered, a tempest of emotions swirling behind the fabric of her hood, hidden yet piercing. A faint sound echoed behind them, shouts mingled with the echoes of gunfire. His heart dropped. "They're coming." "Not here," she insisted, urgency pressing against her every word. "They'll scour the streets for you. We need to move." She flicked her wrist, revealing a narrow door nestled between two old barrels. It looked decrepit, but something about it seemed to pulse with promise. With little time to process, he shoved the girl ahead and jammed the door open, the rusty hinges groaning in protest. Inside was a dimly lit hall, bare save for scattered debris and remnants of broken crates. Flickering bulbs above exposed the dust climbing every crevice. "What is this place?" he asked, scanning for an exit. "It was a refuge," she replied, stepping inside. "Before it doesn't matter. It's safe for now." The air felt thick, the silence almost deafening. All he could think about were the shifting shadows outside, dark specters that could swallow them whole. But for how long? He whispered, fear gnawing at his insides like a relentless beast. "Until I say so," she replied, voice steady, almost maternal now. "You need to understand. What starts here doesn't just concern you. It's bigger than any of us." A chill slid down his spine, unease mingling with curiosity. "What do you mean?" Her gaze softened slightly, but the shadows in her eyes remained potent. "Here, you'll learn to fight not just for your freedom, but for others who can't fight for themselves. It's the only way to truly conquer the darkness." A disorienting notion settled into his mind. Could this be their turning point? Could they transform from terrified victims into warriors? The girl took a step forward, resolve present in her trembling frame. "We don't just survive. We fight back together." With that, the hooded figure smiled faintly, tempered wisdom seeping through her enigmatic demeanor. "Good. You're beginning to see. But remember, with every choice comes a consequence. Sometimes the truth is more dangerous than a bullet. Are you ready for it?" The door screeched louder outside, a herald of chaos chasing after them. Fear drummed in his chest, the shadows were closing in again. What awaited them in this underground sanctuary? And what truth could hold so much peril? Just as quickly as it had come, a loud crash echoed down the hallway behind them. The moment of decision lay before him. Would he stand and fight, or surrender to the uncertainty that clawed at his heart? As darkness converged around them, the choice felt heavier than the weight of their impending doom. The crash startled them, reverberating through the hollow space like an ominous warning. Adrenaline surged through him, amplifying every sound, every breath. He exchanged a quick glance with the girl, who stared wide-eyed, doubt blooming in her chest. "What do we do?" she whispered, her voice quivering. Shoo, the hooded woman hissed, pressing a finger to her lips. The urgency in her eyes made it clear that silence was their only ally. He moved slowly, instinctively inching toward the other end of the hall while keeping the hooded figure in view. Shadows stretched, morphing into grotesque shapes that threatened to consume them. The door creaked as the force from outside slammed against it, the wood shuddering as if it had life of its own. Stay close, the woman commanded, her voice dropping to a near whisper, laced with gravity. But where could they go? The room was a cage, shadows sliding against the walls like the creeping urban decay outside. Panic threatened to seize his thoughts, but he wrestled it back, focusing on the hooded woman. She seemed to have a plan, but for once, he wished she would share it. Can we barricade the door? He suggested, his urgency blending with frustration. Not without making noise, she replied curtly, her eyes darting toward the upper corners of the room. We need a way out before they break in. Like a second exit? The girl ventured, determination edged with trembling fear. Yes, she stated, her voice tinged with urgency, but a flicker of annoyance crossed her features. But it's not easy to find here. He followed her gaze up into the gloom, noticing a faint outline of a set of stairs leading up. What about these? He pointed, hope buoying his spirit for a fleeting moment. Not until it's absolutely necessary, she warned, glancing back at the door. It felt wrong to remain trapped, yet they had nothing but shadows as their allies. Another thunderous crash sent shudders racing down the walls. The door splintered, and the sound of angry shouting seeped through. Hurry! He barked, as panic prickled in his throat. In a heartbeat, she made a decision and darted toward him. We go up. Now. With no time to lose, they sprinted toward the stairs, fear fueling their every step. She led the way, gliding through the darkness as if she owned it. The girl followed closely, her breath quickening like a metronome drumming an anxious beat. Stumbling up the steps, the air thickened, swirling with dust that clawed at their throats. Each footfall resonated loudly in the silence, terror scraping along the sides of his sanity. He could almost feel fingers reaching for him, shadows hungry to drag him back. At the top, the hall opened into a narrow corridor lined with more doors, each promising an unknown fate. The hooded woman turned, eyes wide and fierce. You need to promise me something, she demanded. What? He rasped, chest heaving. If we're cornered, you have to leave me behind. Get her out. What? No. We're not doing that. He fought back against the chill pooling in his belly. Just listen. The fear in her voice cut deeper than he had imagined. I want to let you both fall for me. I have a plan, but I can't play distraction if you're both here. The girl clutched his arm, terror reflecting in her wide gaze. We're not abandoning you. Trust her. She's right for now, he pleaded, torn by the growing dread of their situation. But before they could contemplate their next move, a loud crash rang out again, echoing down the hallway behind them. The door had fallen. Go. The hooded woman urged, her voice laced with urgency. He and the girl could only stare back at her. The choice pressed down on him like an oppressive weight. As the dark shadows coalesced into menacing figures in the doorway, he hesitated. What came next would define everything. Could he accept her sacrifice? Or would he fight to save them all? Suddenly, sinuous shapes began to fill the corridor, and the choice became painfully clear. Would they run or stand and fight? With the darkness creeping ever closer, he knew they had but moments to decide. In the chaos that loomed, he felt the weight of despair pressing down on him, drowning out reason. The shadows twisted around them like merciless tendrils, threatening to strangle any remaining flicker of hope. But there was no time to debate sacrifice versus survival. Run! He growled, the order slicing through the heavy air like a knife. He could feel the pulse of determination rising in his chest, a shared heartbeat thumping in alignment with the girl beside him. She nodded, her eyes wide but shining with fierce courage. Together, they raced down the corridor, their footsteps echoing against the walls that felt far too close, too enclosing. The hooded woman's words burned in his mind, her nod of understanding, her grim acceptance of what was to come. He couldn't shake the image of her standing against the encroaching darkness, a fierce warrior ready to fight. He wanted to scream, to demand she wouldn't have to face it alone, but the sound of their pursuers spurred him on. They pushed through a door at the end of the hall, plunging into a cramped stairwell that spiraled upwards. The girl was panting now, breaths rapid and frantic, but he could sense the adrenaline fueling her spirit. "Keep going," he urged, glancing back over his shoulder, haunted by the silent promise of the woman. He wanted nothing more than to turn back, to abandon the desperate climb and grab her hand, tell her they would stand together, but that wasn't the fight today. No, if they escaped, they could return once the tide had turned. Emerging into the daylight felt like breaking free from a dream, from a metaphorical underworld. The stench of smoke clung to their clothes as they stepped onto the street, sunlight streaming down like a blessing through the haze of their panic. A chaotic world greeted them, flashes of sirens, a few lost souls running in fear. He could hear faint cries echoing from the alleyway where they escaped. "Where do we go now?" she asked, eyes darting around, desperate to find grounding. That he pointed towards a nondescript doorway a few buildings down. "Over there. We need to regroup." They dashed toward it, hearts pounding louder than the chaos unfolding behind them. The moment they crossed the threshold, relief mixed with an undercurrent of dread. This could only be temporary. They knew they still had enemies lurking, plotting. Inside, the small cafe was a stark reminder of a life once familiar, warm smells of roasting coffee, the gentle hum of chatter. But it felt so far removed from the darkness they had just escaped. As they found a secluded booth, the girl dropped heavily into the seat, breathing heavily. "I can't believe it. We made it," she whispered, disbelief mingling with triumph, but victory felt hollow as the weight of their looming threat sank in. "We need to think," he said, glancing over his shoulder as if the darkness would follow them in. "What do we do now? Did you see?" She started, excitement lacing her voice. "The way the people reacted when you stood up to them. They're ready to fight back, too. We can't just let this go." He felt the embers of determination stir to life within him at the thought. The shadows had taunted them, but they had also illuminated the way for others. "You're right. This isn't just about us anymore. If we can rally others, we can create more than just a moment of defiance. We can form a movement." "And how do we do that?" she asked, eyes now reflecting a spark of resolve. "A plan. It's time we expose the darkness, to help others standing like you and me." The connection they forged through fear turned into a shared mission. "Let us spread the word. We'll gather strength, more voices, more fighters." He could feel every heartstring of a community pulling together, rekindling the light of hope, but then a heavy thought settled in. The hooded woman, the mysterious figure who had urged them forward, would she be lost in it all? The image of her fierce determination haunted him. "We need to find her," he murmured softly, more to himself than to her. "She has to know that we're going to fight." Their resolve solidified. The girl nodded. "We will come back. We're stronger together." Confidently, he pulled his phone from his pocket. "Now, let us start mobilizing. Every share, every message, it will resonate. We will not let this darkness choke out the light." The sunlight streamed through the cafe windows, spilling warmth over the table, and for the first time, the air felt electric. Pumped with adrenaline and a growing sense of purpose, they knew that they could face whatever darkness dared to loom. They would be the spark. As they began to type a message, aimed to change lives one heart at a time, a wave of connection surged through them both. Whatever happened next, they were ready. Together, and just like that, an emergency signal flashed through his mind, a call to arms for all those trapped in the shadows. They would rise, and they would fight back. This was only the beginning. The urgency within him surged, taking hold. He turned to the viewers. "If you're still with me, if you believe in the power of change, this is the moment. Subscribe immediately, don't miss what's coming next. Smash that like button now to fuel this fire of hope. Your thoughts matter, flood the comments with your reactions and theories about what should happen next. And for heaven's sake, don't hesitate to share this message with at least 5 friends who need to awaken their own power. This is your call to action, your chance to be part of this movement. Let us rise together.